Well, why don't we get started? I'm Sheila Martin. I'm director of the ARNI initiative. The UEDA is pursuing this ARNI initiative in collaboration with EDA and the University Economic Development Association and its members to build diverse networks of university officials and their ecosystem partners who are committed to making progress on goals related to equity, resilience, and to improve the effectiveness of university centers. ARNI will encourage knowledge sharing and best practices among resilience, equity, and university center members, and build capacity among ARNI network members to participate in local and national programs in economic equity, resilience, and university centers. It'll also develop resources to help universities improve their practices and identify gaps in economic development practices among higher education, community, and their ecosystem partners. We'll be bringing you monthly webinars at noon on the first Wednesday of each month, conversations and convenings, a network of tools, and a special summit at the UEDA annual meeting, which we'll hear about at the end of our program. And now I want to turn it over to Rebecca Robinson to talk about UEDA.
Thanks, Sheila. As you mentioned, I'm Rebecca Robinson, the current president of the University Economic Development Association, or UEDA. As an organization, we connect our members that include higher ed institutions, private sector businesses, and economic development organizations to resources that facilitate economic growth in communities. You'll see here our mission and vision. We're almost 46-year-old institution or organization. And so Sheila, if you want to jump to the next slide, ARNI is but one of our programs. Is but one of our programs at UEDA, but we have many other programs and other benefits that are available to our members. UEDA also provides, through our activities, a forum for collaboration with peers around the globe on higher education, economic engagement activities. Memberships are very accessible. For organizational members, I think it's only $645 to access our whole network of tools and resources. And so we would love to encourage all of you in attendance who are not members to join us by visiting join.universityeda.org. One last way that I would highlight in terms of getting involved with our association would be to participate in our UEDA networks. These networks provide collaborative forums, both online and face-to-face, for regular engagement around topics that are critical in our profession and to the regions that we serve. There are a couple ways to participate in these networks. You see the times and dates, but one are monthly convenings, which are pretty casual, semi-facilitated sessions for folks to get together, discuss news, challenges, best practices, et cetera. And then online workspaces are online forums where users can post questions to the practitioner community, upload resources, and really talk to others. The convenings are open to non-members, but the online workspaces are only available to UEDA members. So we hope you all will join. I'll pass it back to you, Sheila.
Thanks, Rebecca. So I want to get us started with our terrific program today. And I'm going to introduce our panelists briefly, but I won't be able to do them justice because they all have an amazing set of experiences and whoops, what's going on here? Sorry, need to move back, and there we go. Apologies. So there's going to be their full bios are posted, and I'll drop that in the chat in just a minute. Dr. Michael Morris is a professor of practice who specializes in entrepreneurship and social innovation. He holds a joint faculty appointment with the Pulte Institute for Global Development and the McKenna Center for Human Development and Global Business. Both are integral parts of Notre Dame's Keough School of Global Affairs. A pioneer in curricular innovation and experiential learning, he has built 3 university entrepreneurship programs that have been ranked in the top 10 in the United States and earned global recognition for excellence. Dr. Morris is also the founder and director of the Experiential Classroom, a clinic that shares best practices in entrepreneurship education with faculty from around the globe. Dr. Teresa Robinson Harris currently serves as president of the Center for Leadership and Entrepreneurial Studies, a 501c3 nonprofit organization that was established to help promote and uplift small businesses in underrepresented communities throughout San Diego County, California. She has over 20 years of experience working with the small business community and has held a number of positions in procurement and supplier diversity. She currently serves on the Economic Development Committee at the National Small Business Association and as the chair of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at the National Association of Educational Procurement. She also serves as director with the California Association of Public Procurement Officers. She holds a doctorate in organizational leadership from Pepperdine University. Patrick Snyder is the executive director of BizStarts in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. BizStarts supports entrepreneurship in underserved communities and provides education, training, one-on-one coaching, and connections to resources. Patrick has tremendous experience running social and for-profit ventures. His largest wins are in the area of organizational growth. At the age of 27, Patrick started, grew, and sold Shoreline Magazine. He was executive director of the Illinois Travel and Tourism Association, Visit Illinois, which he grew from a 30-member club into a federation of Illinois tourism associations with a membership in the hundreds of thousands. He also served as executive director of the United States Association of Small Business and Entrepreneurship. He's been an adjunct professor at Kendall College and Roosevelt University and an author of a highly acclaimed book, The Startup Student, and has served on the advisory boards of several companies. Welcome, Michael, Teresa, and Patrick, and I'll turn it over to Patrick. Spencer, if you could stop sharing the screen, please.
Thank you, Rebecca and Sheila. It's a pleasure to be with all of you today. Patrick and Teresa and I are partners in crime on an initiative that we want to share with you that concerns the interface between poverty and entrepreneurship and universities. So I'm going to share my screen. I want to start the conversation and predicate the conversation on with this quote or this statement that we need to look at poverty not as a characteristic of a person. Oh, that's a poor person. Oh, that's a but rather of their situation and how that situation itself can be fundamentally changed. Our agenda today is to talk a bit about the poverty challenge and what we think is a very unique and innovative solution, address a couple key questions. One, whether universities can make a difference and in terms of poverty. And two, whether ventures started by the poor, businesses started by those in poverty actually matter, and if so, why? Talk a little bit about outcomes and how they need to be defined, and I want to then share two partner perspectives, one from Patrick Snyder and the other from Teresa Harris. And then we're excited to entertain some questions. The reality in the United States and in most developed countries is that poverty rates have largely stayed unchanged for decades. In the United States, when President Johnson declared the war on poverty in 1965, the rate of poverty in the United States was 14%. It's still pretty much about 14%. And in many university communities, poverty rates are twice the national average. When we then look at minorities, and especially African Americans, we see poverty rates 3 times the national average, with over 45 million people in poverty in this country alone. The gap is getting bigger. And yet, government at all levels spends over $1 trillion a year on poverty programs. What that appears to suggest is that $1 trillion is a critical lifeline to those in poverty, but it isn't necessarily moving large numbers of people out of poverty. And so the question is, are there alternative solutions might entrepreneurship be part of the solution? We're looking at poverty, then we have to appreciate that we're not just talking about a lack of money. The complex mosaic that poverty represents includes everything from poor educational backgrounds to more rate of teenage childbearing, to higher crime rates, to food insecurity, to substandard housing, to lack of dependable transportation, to underemployment, to segregation, exclusion, and limited social networks. So it's this holistic view of poverty, it's this complex mosaic of poverty that has to be taken into account if we're going to talk about entrepreneurship as a pathway out. So let's talk a little bit about entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship, certainly in most people's minds, is about starting a business. There are fancier definitions, but at the end of the day, we think of it as people recognizing opportunity and then capitalizing on that opportunity by creating a venture of their own. From our vantage point, it's much more than that. That we need to think about entrepreneurship as empowerment and as transformation, empowering individuals to create their own jobs, but much more than that, their own identity, their own future, their own wealth, their own sense of pride and self-worth, their own facilities, creating jobs for others, affecting their ability to give back to their communities and their neighborhoods. And that these folks are transforming markets, business practices, industries, themselves and their families, their communities, and local economies. Now, the question is, if we think about this multidimensional nature of poverty, this is a big question. It's one people haven't focused enough on. If we think about the complex nature of poverty, what does it say to somebody who's trying to start a business? Starting a business is tough. But if you're in poverty, it's that much tougher. And so what we've tried to do in our work is translate the characteristics and the nature of poverty into specific, tangible obstacles to successfully starting a business. And we term these the liabilities of poorness. They center on 4 elements. First of all, significant literacy gaps. And I'm not just talking about reading, writing, and numeracy, but technological literacy, financial literacy, economic literacy, business literacy. If you live in poverty, you live in a circumstance of scarcity where you're making weekly choices as to whether to pay a medical bill or pay the rent. That produces a scarcity or immediate term mindset. It's very difficult to think about a 5-year business plan or 5-year pro forma financial statements when your entire cognitive focus is on survival this week and this month, which influences your ability to plan, to think strategically. The poor, when they try to start businesses, face intense non-business pressures. So it's a difficulty in focusing, because I'm dealing with the threat of eviction from my house. I'm dealing with food insecurity. I'm dealing with being mugged or crime. I'm dealing with chronic illness within my family. And finally, the lack of a safety net, no financial buffer, no resource slack, either from oneself, one's family and friends, or from the venture itself. So it's these elements that have to be taken into account when you start talking about creating ventures. The related issue is, well, what ventures are these folks starting? And in our work, they're nuts and bolts businesses, they're online boutiques, they're lawn care businesses, they're candle businesses and eyelash businesses, and people who make baby bibs and people who make lip gloss. And these are important businesses. They do matter. There are those that argue they don't, they fail at a high rate, they don't create a lot of jobs, but they do matter. They fill niches that incumbent firms do not. They create value in local markets. They're embedded in their neighborhoods, embedded in their communities, which, as we'll see, can have some spillover benefits. They have a strong ethic. This is one of the most inspiring things to all of us. What's the motive for starting a business? Not, I want to get rich. It's much more prevalently, I want to make my community better. I want to make my neighborhood better. They hire people. They pay taxes. If we think about the ventures created by the poor, it gets to a larger question. What do entrepreneurs create? And so if you think about what entrepreneurs create, the preoccupation in a lot of economic development conversations, in a lot of local entrepreneurial ecosystems, in a lot of academics, is on what are called high growth, scalable, usually tech-based, sometimes called gazelle ventures, the Ubers of the world, the Facebooks of the world. The problem is, if that's what you're gambling on starting, you might as well go to Las Vegas. The number of high growth, aggressive, scalable ventures started by entrepreneurs represents less than 1% of all startups. And so we have to look at a holistic view of what entrepreneurs create. And so we draw a distinction between what are called survival, lifestyle, managed growth, and aggressive growth, or scalable gazelle firms. About 85% of all startups are survival and lifestyle ventures. With the poor, about 99% of all startups are survival and lifestyle type ventures. These are discrete categories. It's not a continuum. And each of them has unique characteristics in terms of resourcing, in terms of management style, in terms of structure, in terms of rewards, in terms of exits. When we start talking about the poor, not only, if we ask the question, why do they create more survival and lifestyle businesses? It has to do with their opportunity horizons. If you take the multi-dimensional characteristics of poverty, and then you think about how that affects the ability to recognize opportunity, the opportunities I'm able to see, to perceive, are more the things immediately around me. So I start a cleaning business. I start a lawn care business. Those are things I know. Those are things I see. Those are things I have the ability to do. Those are things I know. There are a lot of houses that need cleaned. So that's what I start. This is part of our program, expanding opportunity horizons. The other issue is, if you create a cleaning company, if you create a lip gloss company, and you're poor, you often fall into a concept we call the commodity trap. These are businesses that underprice, they price too low, they're not able to afford equipment and technology, so their unit costs are higher. They're labor-intensive businesses where the entrepreneur is providing all the labor. They have no bargaining power with suppliers. They're not differentiated in the marketplace. Their capacity is limited, so they end up being a low volume business with low margins, which makes it problematic to make money. And this is our focus, how to help these firms break out of this commodity trap and become sustainable. The message in all of this is we have to approach entrepreneurship differently. We can't simply rely on the lean canvas approach, the lean startup approach, or the business model canvas approach. We need a different toolkit. We need a different approach. And that's what we've attempted to develop. Our work over the last 25 years has led us to develop what we call the SPODER Model. Not the greatest acronym in the world, but it is what it is. Our focus then begins with supportive infrastructure. The poor not only lack access to dependable transportation and quality schools and affordable housing and may live in food deserts and so forth. So it's the community infrastructure, but the evidence is clear that local entrepreneurial ecosystems often in their preoccupation with scalable growth kind of companies, don't serve the needs of low income and disadvantaged entrepreneurs. Then we move to preparation of the entrepreneur, which is about developing competencies that relate both to entrepreneurship and management. So business-related managerial competencies like managing cash flow, knowing how to sell, but entrepreneurial competencies like opportunity recognition and resource leveraging and guerrilla kinds of skills. So how do we prepare the entrepreneur? How do we address the 5 literacy gaps that I alluded to earlier? Next is with the prepared entrepreneur, expanding the opportunity horizons, enabling them to see possibilities that they don't currently see. And I'll give you an example of how we take an entrepreneur and help walk their journey and expand that opportunity horizon. Breaking out of the commodity trap through differentiation, an enhanced economic model where the potential for profit actually exists, and then clever, creative. It's not about simply more money in the form of microcredit or loans or some other. It's helping them leverage a whole range of community and other resources without necessarily spending a lot of money that they don't have. As we know, these entrepreneurs don't have access to conventional debt or equity sources of money. Using this model, then, we've developed what we call the Urban Poverty and Business Initiative, UPBI. It is a 10.5-month intervention that has 6 key components that are rolled in on a staged basis. It starts with 6 Saturdays of training. It then moves to mentoring from successful entrepreneurs in the community, one-on-one with these disadvantaged entrepreneurs. It includes an element of student consulting where university students from across the campus create websites and bookkeeping systems and social media campaigns and register businesses. It has something we call Community Connect, which is about connecting these ventures to the local business community, to local resources, a pathway to microcredit, and finally, a tracking program. And so the whole issue of research, we do not know how many low-income people started a business in Indiana or in the United States last year. We do not know their success rates. We do not know what works and doesn't work. And so part of our program is to track these ventures, these entrepreneurs, on 40 metrics over 3 years. Our approach centers on leveraging resources from across a university campus and from throughout local communities to support poverty entrepreneurs. It centers on what we call activity steps, where we try to move an entrepreneur from an idea to a sustainable enterprise and to travel 80 steps. The mountain's too high to climb for the poor unless you can break it down into steps. And so we break it down into 80 activity steps. If you'd like to see the 80 steps, I'll share them in a moment, such that we're walking their journey with them. And our experience is that progress begets progress. If we can take 20 steps with the low-income person, they'll take 20 steps on their own. And so when we start talking about leveraging campus and community resources, think about the rich environment of a university campus and what it can bring on to bear on the ventures of the poor. So whether it's involving the law school and its legal clinics, campus procurement in terms of the millions they spend and how to give more contracts to women and minority businesses, computer science, the College of Education, the people in the art school in terms of developing logos and so forth. The potential on the campus for leveraging resources is immense. And then the community. We think about using the community for mentors, but what about tapping businesses for collaborative procurement, for shared space, so there's a lot of potential. How do we integrate the program, the Goodwill or the local community library is running on literacy with what we're doing is the challenge. The centerpiece, of course, is the 80 steps. And what we do is break the journey down into 80 steps and organize those 80 steps into pre-launch, launch and early operation, and sustainability. So across those three stages, steps that range from everything to something quite simple, but not always that simple for the poor, like opening a business bank account or registering a single member LLC, to more complex activities like creating a bookkeeping system or a business plan. For partners in other cities and other universities and nonprofits, including Patrick and Teresa, the UPBI network provides partners with a playbook, which is literally a blow by blow how to launch the program. We've added a resource support platform, which is everything from teaching materials to videos and suggestions on how to do mentoring. And the cornerstone of the resource platform is a toolkit. So a unique toolkit to doing everything from understanding different kind of guerrilla marketing tactics that you can employ without spending any money, to how to use Canva to design a simple brochure for your business, to how to assess a local market for a business started by somebody in poverty. So in addition, we will come help deliver elements of the program. With the UPBI, one is getting access to a network of partners with very different kind of local situations and circumstances. And so it's not just how we host this thing at Notre Dame, but how one can leverage this community of partners. We have an annual forum where the partners come together. We have a new micro grant initiative where we can give $2,000 micro grants directly to these entrepreneurs based on them completing 25 of our 80 activity steps. So progress is reinforced. We have a co-marketing initiative. We've expanded the initiative to 14 cities. So we're all using the same playbook. It's all a partnership, but and most of these cities are partners. The coordinator at the local level is a university, but my two colleagues today are great examples of, in San Diego, an arrangement where the lead is a nonprofit run by Teresa, but in partnership with San Diego State, and I think we're going to learn about a new partner that they have today. And in Milwaukee, our partner is Patrick, who is running a nonprofit called BizStarts, and yet still trying to leverage relationships with universities. So what is success with this program where we're leveraging university and community resources to help low-income people travel a successful entrepreneurial journey? Success, in our judgment, or in our approach at least, is sustainability. An enterprise that is sustainable. And this is a big issue. It's not, we're finding the numbers of ventures started is not the challenge. It's the quality of those ventures. So one that generates enough profit to change the economic circumstance of the entrepreneur and his or her family. This is the key. And achieving this means breaking out of that commodity trap. It means reflecting the multidimensional nature of poverty with a unique toolkit. The outcomes of our program are at 3 levels. And so one outcome centers on human dignity and human capital development. As we focus on entrepreneurial competencies and business competencies, the entrepreneur, regardless of the outcome of the venture, is their skill set is enhanced, their human capital is enhanced, their employability is enhanced. Most critically, their dignity is enhanced. So there's that individual level factor. The second is ventures, creating a pool of sustainable ventures, ventures that can create jobs, ventures that will pay taxes, ventures that will stabilize neighborhoods. And that gets to the third effect. We believe that there's a critical point where enough of these ventures in a given neighborhood have spillover effects on things like crime, on things like high school dropout rates. The key with entrepreneurship, and again, this is just an example of how one has to tailor one's thinking and reflect the unique circumstances of the poverty context, is not just helping an entrepreneur with bookkeeping or helping them understand how to sell. It's the entrepreneurial mindset. And this is the key to everything, because if you want to navigate 80 steps and the entrepreneurial mindset is the juice that'll get you there, then we can't think about this mindset the way it's conventionally conveyed. It's not about simply being highly innovative and highly growth oriented and taking bold risks. It's more about adaptation. It's more about creative problem solving and leveraging resources and learning from trial and error. And so I thought this quote might cut to the chase. This is one of the people that have come through our program. Just a year ago, me and my daughter was sleeping in my car in hotels for a month. I knew I had to do something. I was never taught, and that was how to live. Thank you for this opportunity. It's such a blessing to me. So I want to stop the share of the slides and turn to my colleagues and ask them both for their reflections on what I've just shared, but more critically, for some of the unique issues they've encountered, some of the unique lessons they've learned. Should we start with Teresa?
Yes, hi, good morning, everyone, and thank you, Michael. So just a little bit of background about our program in San Diego. As Michael mentioned, the program is a collaboration between our small nonprofit and the San Diego State University and SCORE San Diego. And most recently, a week ago or so, we've added the University of California, San Diego, so UCSD. This program, I think, offers it's unique. Very unique. I've been in this space for a long time, and I really enjoy working with the entrepreneurs in this program because I believe that it reaches the entrepreneur at wherever they are, whatever point of the business that they're at. They could be a startup. So there were people in our program that started just a few months ago. We have businesses that started 10 years ago, businesses that, they started 5 years ago, and so on. And this is our pilot. So we launched the pilot in September of last year, and we've ran 24 businesses through the program, through the 6 weeks of training. We are in the third phase of the program. So we went from the 6 weeks training to the mentoring that's done by SCORE. And Michael spoke about the need to bring in others within the community. So we're working collaboratively with SCORE to mentor these businesses. And then we moved on to the consulting phase, which is where we brought in students from San Diego State University to assist the businesses with marketing campaigns, social media campaign, website development, and things like that. And we have students from UCSD now who are coming on board as well to assist with the student consulting portion of the project. And so I think the program is unique in that sense because it brings in the community and it also reaches the entrepreneur. It reaches them wherever, at whatever point they are along this entrepreneurial journey. And the journey is unique for everyone, and we can touch everyone at whatever that unique spot or that unique phase that they're in. We really work with them to help them move from wherever they are in the process to the next step, whatever that next step is for them. Some of the challenges we've seen, Michael touched on the literacy gap, which we address or we try to address in the 6 weeks of training. We see some struggles with regards to social media and marketing, for example, and understanding the finances. And so there is a session that's called Understanding the Numbers that I think is very helpful for them to understand what the different numbers mean that they really need to be aware of as they try to start or further their business. So I think it provides them with the tool that they need to move their business along wherever they are along that entrepreneurial journey. It really touches them at that point and it helps them to move their businesses along. And we work with members within the community, SCORE and others within the community, financial organizations, community development banks to help get them the support they need to move their business to the next level.
Wonderful, Teresa. And Patrick?
Yeah, I'll give you just a little bit of background on BizStarts. It was founded by a gentleman in town named Dan Steininger. And Dan is the grandson of Daniel Hone, who the Hone Bridge was named after in Milwaukee. And I was serving on the BizStarts board and also running the United States Association for Small Business and Entrepreneurship. And I pointed out to the board that, that we're not solving a problem. We were dealing with scalable businesses. We have 8 universities in town that already do that. We have Generators, Scale Up, the Commons, several. And they asked what I would rather do. And I said, help entrepreneurs like my mom, who came over as an immigrant, didn't speak the language. And without entrepreneurship, I wouldn't have the bio that I have today. And they said, if you want to move from running an international organization to running our club, go for it. So I was clueless. I didn't know how to teach entrepreneurship to people that didn't have any money, or how to teach opportunity recognition to people that didn't have any resources, but they had ability. So I went around and I talked to a lot of my folks at USASB, my former bosses, and they said, there's this gentleman named Professor Morris. If there were a Nobel Prize given for entrepreneurship, then underserved Michael would be on the plane to Stockholm tonight. Why don't you go ask him what he wants to do or you should do? And I talked to Michael, and he let me come to South Bend and go through the 6-week boot camp. I learned as much as the entrepreneurs did there. And I enjoyed the experience, and I thought this is what we need to try to solve poverty in Milwaukee. So our board is special because of Dan's background. We have the CFO of Harley Davidson, we have the CEO of Baird. We've got Florsheim Shoes is on our board of directors. Everything you can imagine that's named in Milwaukee. So they kind of serve as our mentors. So you've got a situation where you've got a felony convicted drug dealer that spent hard time in prison creating a cookie business, and he's getting advice from John Olin, the CFO of Harley, how to get these cookies distributed. And Lamar was very successful. He's selling his cookies to law firms, which is curiously, adds to that story. You've got a convicted felon and who's now selling to law firms. And it's become my life's work. We have John Florsheim, who's giving somebody that sells candles, Blossom Candles, teaching her how to get shelf space at retail store outlets. And now she's in 50 of them. We followed Michael's protocol, for lack of a better word, on using the student consultants. We're having a hard time recruiting them because we don't have I guess, a designated relationship with the university, although we do get Marquette students that do it, but the program isn't recognized by the university. So we've got some challenges there. We've had some wins, though, too, where AARP is giving each of our students a stipend of $500. It's kind of seed money. And a lot of the entrepreneurs buy wardrobes with it. So they're, when they're presenting themselves to the public, they're looking really, really good. We have some next phases to the program. We're doing the program in Spanish because the Latino community asked us to do that. We're also looking at doing it in American Sign Language. And the last part that I'm really proud of is we're trying to expand even more. So we said one of the big problems or I guess challenges is how do we get these products on store shelves? So we've now gotten funding to create a store. And we have a packaging company that's volunteered to create packaging for the entrepreneurs' products. So when people go in that store we created, they have beautiful products and people can buy this narrative of Milwaukee is a better place to live because we're supporting entrepreneurship in underserved communities. It's an honor to work with Michael and Dr. Harris. And I hope you all find a way to get things done in your communities.
Thank you, Patrick. And, I think one of the powerful aspects of what we're doing is the partnership. And it's importantly, it's a mutual beneficial partnership in that we help each other, we support each other. And so as Patrick does the work in Milwaukee to translate all that we do into Spanish, that then becomes something that becomes available to all the partners in our growing network. And with Teresa, what you see is a good example of, we think we have a powerful program based on the SPODER model, based on our 6 components, but it's not a straitjacket. And so there's ability to tailor things to local circumstances and local resources. And so with her example of their partnership with SCORE, the mentoring part of our program, which is usually something that's we directly coordinate, SCORE is simply taking that responsibility, but working closely with Teresa to adapt their mentors and what they're doing to the poverty context. On the partnership issue as well, I have to really compliment both Patrick and Teresa, because as we've added new partners, they want to understand our model, they want to understand our approach, but more critically, they want to get a perspective from somebody who's implemented it and the problems they're having and the issues that they're encountering and the approaches that they're employing. And both of them have been our lead people in terms of reaching out and interacting with and helping new partners as they join the program. I saw a question in the chat a moment ago, and the fundraising, well, let me just talk about the cost. So our experience is when we started the program here at Notre Dame, when it was started at the University of Florida, we started with nothing, and there's no university budget to support this kind of thing. And so it's all been bootstrapping. But what we find is twofold. One, you can get the program in place and up and running, and we set a high quality bar for what we deliver. We're not trying to compromise anything just because the audience happens to come from disadvantage. But for 15,000 or less, one can get the whole program in place. One can certainly spend more money, but doesn't need to. But the more important thing we learn is while universities don't have any credibility in this space. So when the University of Notre Dame, when I go out and I say, we got this cool program, and I'm starting to try to meet with stakeholders and gatekeepers in the African-American community, the Hispanic community, they're like, who are you? I mean, who's Notre Dame? What, they got a nice football team, but they've never done anything for me. And so we have to do a lot to build legitimacy and credibility. But what we find is once we do the program for a year, the resources are much easier to come by. The people will get behind what we're trying to do. And Patrick, I think, can give us a good example of that in terms of what he was just talking about with ARP, but I don't know if you want to chime in on this, the issue of resources, Patrick.
Yeah, I think that, like you said, that everybody, when people are going to, you run the first one as a pilot because people are going to be skeptical that the thing even works, and then when they find some of the entrepreneurs literally calling on them to see if they want to buy coffee mugs or candles as gifts for their employees for Christmas, and I'm talking about the foundations, and they see the level of collateral material and the professionalism on the calls, they start saying, we want to be a part of this. I mean, the landlord that's doing the store, they basically are working on commission. Like they're rolling the dice with us that we're not going to charge you any rent, but if this works, we're going to take X amount, and it's a very small amount. It's 5%. But they were on the news, all the papers on TV. So it was a good gamble for them. But a lot of people are generous too. We get individual donors. We had a family literally give us $75,000 because they thought somebody should be doing this, and we took the chance. Before BLM was a bumper sticker, basically 3 years ago, we started with Michael. So they know our heart's in the right place. And when they see the businesses and they talk to the businesses, they open up their checkbooks.
And Teresa, I want you to jump in if you would, Teresa, but one of the impressive things that you were able to do in terms of not having a lot of resources to begin with, and so leveraging community resources, is you got a partnership with the local cable television station?
Yes, I was going to bring that up, that even though the program was new and so people were skeptical, we're still in our pilot, but during those initial few months, we approached several people to assist with funding. And while they wouldn't give hard cash, they were willing, like Cox Cable was willing to do a PSA for us, which helped us attract the first cohort or pilot group. They aired it pretty much every day for 100 days. And we had over 50 or so people that were interested as a result of this PSA that Cox pushed out. We had to delay the program twice. And so at the end of the day, we ended up with 25 because of those delays. But still, that PSA that Cox did was really helpful in getting the word out. And we offered a scholarship. We put a price of $500 on the program and offered a scholarship of $400 and said, if you want to be part of the program, you could pay $100 to get involved. But if you attend all 6 weeks of training, we will return that $100 to you at the end of the 6 weeks. And then Alliance University came in and they said, we want to pay that $100 so that all those people who are attending can get that $100 back at the end of the program. And so that was very helpful, even though, it was difficult at first to get the attention of individuals who would rather see a more established program before they pitched in.
Yeah, I want to point out, Teresa raises a very important issue too, because the two delays that they had with launching the program were because of the rules in California about public meetings, and COVID was raging at the time. But it gets to another issue, and I wonder if Patrick will jump in on this. So this is all in person, and none of it happens on the campus. We do it in the community. We do it in the neighborhoods that we're trying to serve. And one of the questions is, well, can you do it at a distance? Can you do it online? And our experience is no. That the personal touch, the personal interaction is critical, especially with the issues related to non-business distractions and literacy challenges and so forth. And the numbers in every city are different, but Patrick, you want to talk about your experience with the first group? Is quite large, and you had COVID going on, and
yeah, so we had 125 businesses apply to the program, and and coincidentally, along with Michael's thinking, we had an office in Schlitz Park, which is a beautiful location. It's right on the river and has a view of the lake, Lake Michigan. And I said, why do I want to spend rent to billionaires when I could go to St. Anne's, which is in the middle of the community, and have it there? They had a place that holds 250 people. So we were safe having 25 in that location. We gave away 25 individual scholarships and said, and the rest can show up online. A couple things, no one showed up online. The second thing is that our entrepreneurs are taught that when you buy from Walmart, the CEO of Walmart will cut 600 jobs to give himself a raise. And if you want to buy from people, buy from each other. So, and if you're going to be prejudiced against people that don't buy stuff from you. So we've got this group that immediately now, if they weren't in person, they wouldn't do this, but they all buy from each other, but they all learn from each other. And that magic happens when you're all together.
That is amazing. And I really appreciate all the insight that you've all brought to us today. We have just a couple of minutes left, and there is one more question in the Q&A that I'd like to address, and it's from Anna Lou Fonseca at Oregon State. Hello, Anna. Anna Lou, she has asked, she has noted that that successful entrepreneurial activities in Latino women often depend on culturally relevant and responsive programming. And how are you utilizing these kinds of perspectives in your program?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question, and it's such an important one. You know, some of it's reflected in our marketing approach, and which is what we call a push and a pull approach, where we have flyers and posters and do things like the PSA that Teresa mentioned. But the more important ingredient is the gatekeepers, often not the loudest voices, but the more influential voices in the African-American community, in the Hispanic community, in gatekeepers that work with the formerly incarcerated, gatekeepers who work with refugees. And so those individuals are critical in referring people to our program and endorsing the legitimacy of what we're trying to do. But the other part of this is tied to everything I said about the liabilities of poorness and how we tailor the programming to reflect the literacy gaps, to reflect the non-business distractions. We're talking about a single mom with 4 kids working 2 part-time jobs while she's trying to start a business. Well, our mentors have to be coached up to understand that kind of entrepreneur. Our content has to be modified to reflect that kind of entrepreneur. The other big problem is that the audiences that we serve do not, as a rule, have entrepreneurial role models. And so we are focusing a lot on that issue. The way our program is structured, content is delivered, but then we bring in 2 entrepreneurs to discuss their experiences with the content that we just delivered. And those 2 entrepreneurs will tend to be people who are from that ethnicity or from that community, who came from a disadvantage. This raises one related issue. I know we're down on time, but our whole focus is to serve these individuals and move their ventures to sustainability. But we're seeing a lot of benefit on the campus. We have students involved in these consulting projects, and I'll tell you honestly, I have sociology students creating bookkeeping systems for ventures. That's magic. But the students are involved in other ways, and the benefit to the campus. So we have students doing senior theses on aspects of our program or what we're doing. We have students writing case studies on these ventures, and So the ability to engage faculty, staff, I mentioned our procurement office, is another piece of this.
That is really fantastic. That engaged learning element brings a lot of benefits to the university. And so I want to thank all of our panelists today. We could continue to talk about this for hours, and soon we'll be opening our ARNI networks, and we'll be posting discussions like this in those networks. So I posted a link in the chat for people to sign up to the ARNI network, and you will receive information about how to become a member of that network. And Spencer, if you wouldn't mind putting up our slides, our remaining 2 slides, I want to just encourage folks to tune into our webinar on June 1st, where we'll be focusing on resilience. So yeah, we'll be focusing on resilience on June 1st. And then also I want to remind folks that we'll continue these conversations at our Economic Accelerator Day at the UEDA Summit. This year, the summit will be in San Antonio, October 9th through 12th, with the Economic Accelerator Day happening on October 9th. The Economic Accelerator Day is the ARNI-sponsored free day of content around the ARNI topics of economic resilience, economic equity, and university centers. Registration is open, and we'll also be accepting presentation and content suggestions, as well as applications for UEDA's Awards of Excellence, which celebrates the best practices throughout the higher ed economic development space. So deadlines for content are forthcoming very soon, so be sure to check out the UEDA website and the Summit website for more information. And just a big note of thanks to all of our webinar participants and our panelists today. It was really exciting and inspirational story for everyone today. All right, with that, thanks everybody.